Hello and welcome to this week's Hippie Hyena. So, behind the scenes on Hippie Hyena, we have a secret WhatsApp group that we use to bookmark videos and other things that we think may be of use to the channel later on. One of these videos, which was bookmarked in this WhatsApp group, with the idea that I probably would cover it this week, was a video by a channel called Red Pill Philosophy. Now, interestingly enough, when I came to take a look at it, a mere 3 days later, his entire channel had been banned, it appears. Or at least his channel on YouTube has been deleted. Luckily, he's got a secondary channel on BitChute, which is becoming more and more my go-to place for chud videos. But assuming that his YouTube channel was banned, I thought that could add another interesting dimension to this week's episode, going through his video and seeing if we agree with that banning, if we think that banning was justified or not. So let's take a look at this video from the channel Red Pill Philosophy.
So, what you're about to hear is a conversation that I just had with a patron of mine over on Patreon, a supporter. We had a really in-depth conversation about the fake hoax virus pandemic.
It's beginning to make some sense as to why it was banned. So usually I've got quite a lot of time and patience for outlandish conspiracy theories. In general, I like diversity of opinion and I like conspiracy theories that are way out there. I mean, I personally don't adhere to them, I don't follow them, but I'm sort of generally glad they exist because they're pretty funny and interesting. However, certain conspiracy theories have proved themselves to be incredibly dangerous, especially if people take them seriously. It's all well and good having people who believe that the earth is flat. I mean, in general, who cares? Basically, it doesn't make any difference to any of our lives except we have a zoo of people to point at and laugh at. However, when they start peddling things like the pandemic is fake, it means we're having to rely on the good behaviour of complete maniacs to keep us alive, and that is not very good. I mean, I really am sick, as I'm sure most of the people listening to this channel are, of this goddamn pandemic, and I really want it to end. And people who are claiming that the virus is imaginary and a hoax are in some large part directly responsible for its ongoing drudgery. Because no matter how much people like me and my friends, and I'm sure my lovely subscribers and listeners, are following the rules, wearing masks and staying indoors as much as they can, there's only so much that can make a difference to when all of these morons are out there infecting each other and our loved ones. As I said, conspiracy theories in general, good fun, but conspiracy theories that might directly lead to thousands and thousands of deaths, probably irresponsible to allow that sort of thing to be shown on your platform, I would imagine.
We talked about flat Earth.
Ha! Of course you did.
We talked about the globe Earth. We talked about basically the whole gamut of all the crap that's going on today. So again, guys, this is it. Enjoy it, watch it, and check out the links in the description. I'll talk to you guys soon. I was never too much into the vaccine thing, whether or not there's an evil agenda behind it, or I never studied that too much, but I did have a general hunch, which was avoid it at all costs.
Bad hunch. That is a pretty bad hunch.
At best, vaccines are a necessary evil. Like, in an ideal world, you don't have to get injected right out of the womb in order to function as a healthy human being. In an ideal world, you don't have to do that. So, at best, vaccines are a necessary evil. That was sort of my position. Obviously, with the whole rise of the big corona hoax, corona nonsense,
quick disclaimer here, it's not a hoax. It's not nonsense. If anything, they are underestimating the numbers. You gotta think about what would be the motive for such a hoax, because at the moment, capitalists are in charge, and they really hate people taking time off work, and for a lot of businesses, corona and lockdowns and so on is massively inconvenient, and they'd much rather it just sort of went away. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if we were to find out later that they'd been lobbying politicians to keep the economy open, because they don't care about the human cost. They'd rather get some money today than have customers that live and breathe tomorrow. It's funny how right-wing conspiracies are always completely contradictory in the sense that they always accuse the super rich of doing things to make themselves less rich. It just literally doesn't make any sense.
Vaccines became front and center again with Bill Gates, proposing that he's gonna, I mean, the guy's insane. The guy said, he basically said, in order for things to return to normal pre-COVID, every single person on the face of the flat Earth is gonna have to take the vaccine, the COVID vaccine. And it's
Yeah.
like that's the craziest shit I've ever heard.
You just said, oh, let me just reiterate this. You just said on the face of the flat earth and people having to take a vaccine to prevent a pandemic is the craziest shit you've ever heard? Well, forgive me for doubting your expertise at your ability to discern what is crazy shit and what isn't.
It's pretty insane that they're like, no, herd immunity can't be reached, and basically we have no other plan except this vaccine that hasn't been invented yet. We'll put all our eggs in that basket.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you haven't invented it yet. You've never proved that a vaccine works. It's like, how can people not see that the agenda behind it? It's just so blatantly obvious.
Well, to be fair, you can't see it either, because the agenda is simply to get the grunts back to work, and they don't want to do lockdowns, because that would fix it, but it would also mean that big business doesn't have their wage slaves' noses back to the grindstone, which is their main agenda. A vaccine is convenient because that could be achieved with, half an hour off work, 15 minutes to the nearest place to get the vaccine, 15 minutes back, and everything can go back to horrific capitalist normal. That's what's so funny about the whole red pill meme, because that comes from the Matrix, the ability to see reality for what it actually is, when the people who go on about the red pill meme are so delusional. They're the most far from reality you could possibly get. It's like they found the general propaganda that's being pumped out by big business and government and whoever else, mainstream media, and thought, you know what, this isn't extreme enough for me. I'm gonna jump into this with both feet and go even further than the propaganda that exists in capitalists' most delicious wet dreams. Because it's not like they are rejecting the mainstream propaganda. They're just going even further than those propagandists thought was okay to risk without being obviously found out for what they're doing.
Yeah,
And on the kind of spiritual slash, how do I say this? Like, the consciousness side of it, is it like, are people actually seeing different shit? You know,
oh my
like,
God.
or are people just dumbed down?
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point, because it's definitely a conversation I've been having with a friend of mine since this Corona nonsense started, and that's like, well, number one, your point is, that's one thing. Your point, which is, it's almost like at this point, I mean, technically, even before Corona, let's say flat Earth versus globe Earth. I mean, that's literally two different realities, and so I've already gotten a taste of this idea that I can live in a totally different reality than somebody else.
And here's a bit of what you might call self-awareness, which is surprisingly rare, or maybe not very surprisingly, from these right-wing lunatics. Yes, you do live in a different world than everyone else, because the world that everyone else lives in is known as sanity, is based on facts and reason, and is backed up by evidence, whereas the world that you live in is some bizarro, doublethink, projection, propaganda nightmare, where you've built up your cognitive dissonance defenses so high that you can literally cognitive dissonance around any evidence which is presented your way in order to maintain your bizarre narrative where down is up, left is right, black is white, good is evil, evil is good. Your compasses totally point south.
So yeah, people's worldviews change, but you'd think with something as concrete as a pandemic, it wouldn't be open for interpretation. The bodies are piling up. The hospitals are overwhelmed. The cases are skyrocketing. You probably know 10 people who have it.
Yes, exactly. And yet, even despite this incredible, stultifying amount of evidence, you people are still able to maintain your fantasy world. And I think at this point, right-wingers are definitely sort of reflexively wrong. They're so used to having facts contradict their political opinions at every single turn that now, when they're presented with facts, they just reflexively, automatically they believe the opposite. Whatever the evidence suggests, they do the exact opposite. Biden wins the election, obviously, and they believe that Trump won it. They investigate fraud, they find no fraud, and yet they believe there is fraud. Vaccines have increased the longevity of the human race massively. It's documented, everyone knows this. They believe the opposite. The coronavirus, the pandemic, is causing trouble across the world, obviously, and they believe the opposite. Global warming is a real thing, and it's gonna probably kill us unless we do something about this, and they believe the opposite. Just consistently, across the board, they just believe the opposite of whatever is true. And what makes this so, well, equal parts frustrating and hilariously funny is that they're the ones who keep talking about, facts don't care about your feelings. When literally, they don't care about facts. They only have feelings on their side. It's absolutely absurd that the most irrational, the most illogical, the most anti-science group of people you could possibly imagine. And I say this as a hippie who thinks that UFOs are probably a thing, who does tarot readings. These people are the most irrational people you could possibly find on this planet, and their slogans are all based around how unemotional and how rational they are. But there's a reason for this, quite apart from it being projection, which nearly everything that the right wing does is projection. Everything they claim that the left is actually what they are. But apart from the projection, which is, as I say, a very key part of understanding the way that right wing people think, is that when they talk about the left being emotional, what they actually mean is compassionate or empathic, that we actually care about people and this world beyond what can benefit ourselves directly. So, should red pill philosophy have been banned from YouTube? Well, it's debatable. I would argue that someone like red pill philosophy, whose arguments are so patently absurd, albeit dangerous if anyone were to believe them, I think they lack the ability to convince anyone who's not more stupid than he is, which is a very small number of people. I think if I was in charge of YouTube personally, I wouldn't ban RedTube philosophy. I think he's largely harmless, because the sort of people who listen to him probably believe that sort of thing anyway, because they're idiots. However, someone like Sargon of Akkad, who's far less goofy, is far more dangerous, because despite the fact that Sargon of Akkad is an idiot, he's a more intelligent idiot than this guy, which means there are more people beneath him on their idiot hierarchy that he's able to convince to be irresponsible, dangerous maniacs like himself. Anyway, the pandemic is real, and if a vaccine's available to you, you probably should take it. Have a good one.